all the problems in society are men's fault. They say they want to defund the police. What a stupid idea. They've got something to say on business that I don't know about.
I want the leaders of industry to be there. That's what I agree. Aggressively agree with you. Hello and welcome to Informally Informed. I'm Izzy.
And I'm Garcia.
And we are joined today by Nick Buckley. Thanks for joining. You are officially our first guest.
Thank you very much, I'm honoured.
So,
Sebastian didn't count.
No, Sebastian doesn't count. So Garcia knows virtually nothing about you.
Yep.
So we thought we'd start by just explaining a bit about your history and how it is you ended up getting to where you are.
Yep. I came to national attention 4 years ago. I was cancelled through cancel culture. I was running a charity that I founded at that point, working with kids on the streets, stopping them getting involved in crime, working with the homeless. Black Lives Matter happened in America. We've been locked down in this country, and we had a BLM demonstration in London where 27 police officers were injured. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I've heard of BLM, don't know much about them. So I Googled BLM, found their website, read what they put on their website and said to myself, I don't like the sound of any of this. So I wrote a 700-word blog that I put on my personal social media about what I discovered on their website. So not a conspiracy theory website, not someone's opinion of what they put, it was actually their website. Basically about being anti-capitalist, defund the police, but the one that jumped out at me that made me write the article was disrupt the Western nuclear family. And it took me a long time to understand that. I was thinking about it for 5-10 minutes thinking, what does that mean? They're all English words, and individually I know what every one of those words means, but when you put it together in that sentence, what does it mean? And I ended up coming to the conclusion it means we need to get rid of more fathers out of the home. And that's when I said, no, I'm not having this. This is the biggest problem we've got in the UK and across the Western world, to be honest. So I wrote an article on that about what I discovered and why I wasn't a supporter of BLM. Now, this was June 2020, the height of BLM madness in this country, across the world. So, of course, automatically I was classed as a racist and a Nazi, a fascist, everything you could imagine. Somebody online set up a petition to have me fired from the charity that I founded. The board of the charity, who I appointed, panicked, and they sacked me via email. I decided I wasn't accepting that, so with help of the Free Speech Union, I took on the board, threatened them with legal action, and I forced the board to resign in disgrace. Got my job back, got control of the charity again, and then stayed with the charity for another year, making sure it didn't go under because a lot of damage had been done to the charity with funders and things like that. So that got me international attention. I was the first big victory for the Free Speech Union, who'd only been going for several months before what happened to me. And then I decided one day, I had a lot of luck surviving the attempt to cancel me. Other people won't have that luck. And what am I going to do about it? So I can either just go back to my old life and just be silent and not say anything ever again, or I can keep on fighting. And that's when I decided I was going to keep on fighting. So I resigned from the charity to make sure I didn't cause any more problems for them. And I decided I was running for Mayor of Greater Manchester. So I stood against Andy Burnham. And that was this year. I came third. I beat Reform UK, I beat the Lib Dems, and I beat the Greens, and I stood as an independent. And then I stood in a general election a couple of months later. Didn't really do well in a general election. It's very hard for an independent with no money. The money I had, I spent on running for mayor. I spent 20 grand of my own money on that. I had no more money left to spend. In the meantime, I wrote some books on personal responsibility and on courage. What I've been trying to do for the last couple of years is to empower British people to reclaim this island and to start taking personal responsibility for the country that's failing. And it's been failing for all my life, it's been failing, and we're going down the wrong path. And what we keep saying to ourselves is, oh, it's the government's fault, it's the government's fault. We vote in the government, it's our fault. And for the people who don't vote, it's also your fault for not voting.
Can I just... Sorry.
Yeah.
I have so many questions based
on
on everything that you've just said. I mean... I know Izzy said you'd been cancelled.
Yep.
Never once did I think this was what it was for. So, and I don't mean to sound combative, and it's not because I'm black, I'm just generally asking this question. Do you have the same energy for the Muslim Brotherhood? Because they were rioting in Oldham, they were doing all this stuff. Did you write an article for that?
Oh, I've been heavily critical of radicalism.
Right.
Been heavily critical of men in general.
Yeah.
All the problems in society are men's fault.
I don't agree.
Oh, not. It's the man's role to protect and provide for his family, for his community, for his nation. The reason why we've got a failing nation at the moment is because men are not living up to that God-given duty of men providing and protecting. So I'm heavily critical of lots of sectors of society. I wrote a book on feminism, heavily critical of feminism. That's one of the big evils of the modern world.
Okay, true. I mean, I agree for a myriad of reasons, but I want to hear yours. What's the issue with feminism?
Oh, feminism is a big con. It's a lie that women have fallen for. People say it's only modern feminism. It goes all the way back, 200 years. Feminism basically is a trade union for other feminists. It's a way of women who haven't got the competency to get what they don't deserve. It's the very first victim narrative of playing victim Olympics, and other people have copied that ever since. But major criticisms of feminism is, in my lifetime, every decade we've had more and more feminist policies. We're becoming over-feminized, men are becoming over-feminized, society's become over-feminized. And what has that led to? Since the 60s, every decade since the 60s, women report more and more unhappiness. Men's has basically stayed the same.
No, it hasn't. Men have also reported more and more unhappiness. The antidepressant crisis that we have is actually more affecting men than it is women.
Not according to the stats I've seen.
Well, according to the stats that I saw, which is the ones I looked up for my recent speech, that is the case, and that's from the Office of National Statistics. Men are more likely to commit suicide, but men and women actually attempt the same number of suicides. Just men succeed.
No,
we're talking about happiness.
Women attempt suicide 5 times the rate of men.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but
they attempt suicide a lot more. Men attempt suicide less, but are more successful because we go straight to deadly consequences.
You could argue that most women are just doing it for attention, then, really, couldn't you?
I can send you links that this is undisputable.
I'm not.
Social science evidence is out there.
But I'm just interested in sort of. You said a lot.
Yeah, of course I did.
You kind of blown my mind a little and a lot. So you got cancelled on Twitter. No, you got cancelled because of an article, a blog post, essentially. And what did that entail outside of your charity? What real world effects were there for you being cancelled?
The big one was I lost my job.
Yeah.
I lost friends from the charity. Mm-hmm. I lost, and still to this day, I've lost my reputation within the charity world. I could never work in the charity world ever again. I couldn't set up another charity. If you Google my name, it comes up with accusations of racism, of all those things. So my reputation has not been destroyed, it's been damaged. I spent the first 5 weeks when I was fighting back was horrendous. Mm-hmm. I lost, even now I don't earn anywhere near the amount of money I did when I ran the charity. It was a highly successful multi-award winning charity. We employed over 30 staff. We worked Greater Manchester and London. We won awards every year. I was awarded an MBE for setting the charity up and doing the groundbreaking work we did. That even to this day, no one does the work my charity still does. It's still very successful. It won another national award last year, even though I'm not involved anymore. So it changed my life completely. And I'd say it radicalised me. I am a different person to the person I was then. I knew at that point our country was going down the wrong path. I'd known it all my life. I talked about it, hence why I wrote blogs about things like that. But since then, I've pulled away the curtain, and I can see clearly now. And the biggest change in me now is I'm not afraid anymore now. Mm-hmm. I always curtailed what I said when I ran the charity. Before that, I worked at the council, so I always curtailed what I said there. Now I'm a free spirit, and I can say things now that I truly believe, and I don't have to worry about the consequences.
Okay, all right. So, what about everything that's what in about everything that sort of happened to you? What are your feelings now on sort of the situation in 2020? Can you see a different nuance from it, or was it just based on the BLM website, or was it based on the actual rioting in London and the situation that happened with the police? Because you mentioned the police, then you mentioned that this happened, and you wrote about it, and you went to this website and wrote this blog. So was your ire based on the situation on the ground or the situation on the website? Because
the website.
Because I don't know much about BLM. No. I just don't. Because as for me, it's an American thing that just kind of got brought over here. So, and America's a very racialized society that even though we are, it's not in the same place. Britain's is more of a class divide than a racial divide. Even though things seem to be going that way. Anyway, so was it based on BLM in the UK, or was it just BLM generally? Because didn't BLM in America, wasn't the founder found to have stolen loads of money?
Loads of money.
Many people involved in BLM in this country and America have been prosecuted for fraud. People in America who were chapter leaders of BLM in different cities have been prosecuted for things like human trafficking, paedophilia, rape, prostitution, as well as fraud. All this has come out since 2020. Again, it's all been documented by the press across the world. So my article was basically saying, with all of the BLM, the stuff going on in the country that no one understands, I've looked on their website, they say they want to throw over capitalism. That sounds like they sound like Marxists to me. They say they want to defund the police. What a stupid idea. Because I've spent 20 years working with the police. I used to train police officers. I used to be based in police stations. All the people I met in the poorest communities of Greater Manchester, black, brown, gay, whoever they were, all said to me, we want more police. Because the poorer you are, the more you rely on the police for safety. The richer you are, the more you can afford to protect yourself with security, private firms, or whatever.
Live in better areas.
Exactly. So defunding the police, stupid idea. But then they disrupt the Western nuclear family. And we have to remember, the three founders of BLM are three black lesbian Marxists. So the fact that...
One of them actually said on stage during the interview, I'm a trained Marxist.
Yeah.
They say this.
Yeah, openly say it.
I don't know. Again, I'm just not interested in BLM.
You're a black woman. How can you not know about BLM? That's what they would say to you.
I'm just not interested in that. I've got other interests. I'm a nerd.
Because your colour doesn't define your political stance on what you're interested in.
Well, no, it doesn't. Define however, I mean, I do have quite a lot of anti-capitalist stances, though. Yeah. So I guess. I mean, there was loads of issues. I've read loads of stuff about the BLM issues, more like the fallout as opposed to what they actually stand for. Because for me, it's a similar situation to Rosa Parks. Yeah. So Rosa Parks wasn't the first black lady to refuse to give up her
She was a PR stunt.
Yeah, she was a PR stunt. And she was light-skinned and various different things, so they chose her. It was actually a teenage lady that was pregnant. Dark-skinned lady that was pregnant, and because she was teenage pregnant,
unmarried,
they decided that they didn't want her to be Rosa Parks, who was married, light-skinned, had a job, blah 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 blah, educated. in all honesty, I mean, obviously, someone died at the end of the day. Someone died. Regardless of the circumstances, someone died. So that's the part for me, the human part. But I didn't agree with them martyring George Floyd without... Is it George Floyd?
Yeah, George Floyd.
Without knowing the facts. I don't...
Yeah.
I don't... It was too sensational, if you recall me. It was too sensationalized, and I can't with sensationalized things. It has to make actuals. I need the facts.
Yeah.
So a lot of people... I didn't jump on the BLM train.
BLM was a fluke. BLM only happened here because it was lockdown.
Yeah, I was very surprised because
it was the only reason it happened.
George Floyd didn't happen here. There have been high-profile... there's been high-profile issues within the Metropolitan Police that black community could have actually gone gung-ho on that, but they didn't. The people that there are people that have literally never had justice out of the Metropolitan Police. We've had to deal with the Metropolitan Police and all their madness, and they didn't do that. They're instead choosing to fight in America's racial battles, and I don't believe in that. I always say this. I mean, America says cough and we bend over, so you know what I mean. That's the way that is. I guess it's just along. I'm just asking, like, so what made you run for mayor? So this happened to you. All of these things were dreadful for a while. You said never quite recovered. What made you decide, I'm going to run for mayor?
I can remember the exact time. I was sat watching TV and Greater Manchester Police had just gone into special measures, which means they were failing.
Yeah.
And I think it was the second time a police force in the UK had ever been placed in special measures.
Was this Greater Manchester?
Greater Manchester Police. Run by Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. And I've spent 20 years working with the police, like I said, trained police officers based in police stations, and I know the valuable work the police do. If we don't have a police force, we're going to lose society. There always has to be a police force to keep people who will do evil and rob everybody in line. So we need a professional, decent police force. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I feel about the police. I'm not the biggest fan of the police. I do think that we need law and order, but I think we need less government interference. And I feel like the issue is, I would never call for defunding of the police anyway. I think that they need to stop misallocating funds. That's what I think. Stop responding to things that you shouldn't be responding to.
Oh, yeah.
Spend time actually doing police work.
Yeah. A lot of the failings come from the political masters.
Yeah, so for me, it's not so much about defunding the police. I think that's nonsense. I do.
You just want a better police force.
And I don't think that you don't get that much like the NHS without investing.
So they got placed in special measures, and I thought, I've had enough. I've had enough of, if we're going to lose this country, then it starts with losing the police. And I don't know anybody now who respects the police. Where 20, 30 years ago, the only people that didn't respect the police were called criminals. Everybody else had a high opinion of the police. And everyone has lost all professionalism now, the way they think about the police. And I thought, I need to do something.
And a lot of that was to do with BLM and a lot of... And social media, I think.
I don't think so. I think it's been like this. It's been it's been coming for a while.
And the fact that a lot of crimes haven't been solved. Yeah. People's houses get broken into.
It's been going on for decades.
If you think about, for me, I mean, my first what's the word? So I used to want to be a police officer, but my first Metropolitan Police officer, my first sort of real.
So for those of you who don't know, Metropolitan means specifically London.
Was the Stephen Lawrence case.
Yeah.
And that, for me, cemented that the police were not here for us, black people, at the time. Because if you remember, we didn't rally around the Stephen Lawrence case in the same way, though. There were no violent protests or anything like that, but we did that for a man across the sea. So I think that's where my issue is with the BLM in this country. Okay, we need to. If you're going to focus on if you're going to rally around a community, you need to focus on homegrown issues. We should not be. We've got enough of our own problems. We shouldn't be importing them like we import food.
Yeah.
and people.
The Stephen Lawrence case. The Stephen Lawrence case is, if you had to pinpoint what broke our police, it was that, and not for the reasons you think. That was a political attack on the police. The same things happen to white people in London, and it's not investigated. Stephen Levinson's case was not treated badly because he was black. Stephen Levinson's case was treated badly because we have far too many incompetent police officers in many of our police forces. It was blown out of all proportion, and it was used by race baiters in this country, just like race baiters in America used George Floyd to push their own agenda. What happened to Stephen Levinson was a tragedy, but it wasn't what many people made out it to be.
I disagree with many points in that statement. Firstly, I think that, okay, in this country, we live in a majority white country, okay?
Yep.
I know that it's gone from 90-something to 80-something, but we do live in a majority white country. When something happens in a minority community, it's the same way like the murder rates in Jamaica. Jamaica's only got, it's a country of 2 million people. If 10 people get murdered, you will have a higher murder rate. Okay? The Stephen Lawrence thing wasn't just, it was a culmination of many, many things. There were other, like you said, there was other people that had died in similar things, but so it was a culmination of people going, they're not doing anything about this. It was like the Damilola Taylor case. You remember that? Because that was, for me, in my lifetime, that was the biggest sort of closest thing, because I was living in London at the time. And I remember that, and I remember the way that the police handled that, and I remember the way the police handled the children around that. They were literally rounded up kids, were questioning them without their parents. It's well documented. The Metropolitan Police have got a different way of dealing with people in London, in and around London. Not to mention during the time there was the crime situation that was happening in Brixton, so there was a lot of stop and search happening at the time. All of these things, when they impacted community. There's a large, obviously we live in a majority white country. It's like when, what's this young lady that recently died, Nicola Buckley? Do you remember that? Recently, she drowned or something. And the police came out and flopped it and told loads of information and then called her an alcoholic and now they can't in the information, That became massive for a lady that was missing walking a dog.
Yeah.
There are things that like that happen all the time and you don't hear about it.
Yeah.
But on the news and especially on national news, we hear more about those high profile cases than we do minority ones. And I always find that when we're discussing these things, people always go, it was blown out of proportion. No, it wasn't. Not to the community of people that were dealing with that stuff at the time. So, but I understand because it's nuance and it's perspective on things.
Yeah.
But I guess why mayor? Why not an MP?
Because the mayor election was coming up.
Yeah. Okay.
So the mayor election.
The next one, next available one.
So you only decided you were going to run maybe like 6 weeks before the election.
That was for MP. Only because anyone had 6 weeks.
For the first time you ran for mayor.
For mayor, the first time was about 6 weeks. But when I ran this year, I took a year off work and worked on it full time for a year. Yeah,
and you came third. You only came a couple of thousand behind the Conservatives.
The Tories, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we did.
If Reform stepped into the race at the last minute, if Reform had not stepped into the race, who I beat, if they'd not stepped into the race, I would have come second, and I would have been national news. But coming third isn't national news.
Yeah.
And plus, I think a lot of sorry, Izzy, cut you off. I feel like a lot of the media coverage was given to Reform anyway, regardless of what was happening.
I didn't get invited to any of the hustings. I didn't get invited onto any of the press. There was 6 candidates standing. I was the only one to get invited anywhere. And
Did you ask them?
Yeah, and the answer from all of them was, "You're an independent. You're not a real candidate. You've never stand, so we don't invite you." And that's called democracy.
We don't live in a democratic society.
Yeah.
We've never lived in a democratic society.
What would you do as Mayor of London?
Manchester.
Manchester. What did you run on, and what would you do?
I ran on several things. I won't be able to remember them all now. The first one was the police. I was going to fix the police. I was going to eject all the woke nonsense, the DEI nonsense, all the identity politics, all out of the police. I was going to go back to old-fashioned policing and deal with crime. I was not going to deal with mental health breakdowns, we'd have stopped attending that. We'd say, NHS, it's down to you. We're a crime fighting force. We're not here to pick up on social problems. So I'd have revolutionised the police and got back to basics. We wouldn't have been knocking on doors because you tweeted something nasty online. I was going to do none of that. I was going back to what the general public want the police to do, which is keep you safe. And that's what I was looking at. I was going to be... Homelessness was another one, rough sleeping. I was going to end rough sleeping in 1 year. Andy Burnham promised 8 years ago we'd end it in 3 years. Mm-hmm. What about Manchester City Centre? Mm-hmm. Nothing's changed. And he spent... The last time I looked, about a year ago, he'd spent over £500 million on it. And nothing's changed.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. He's got no idea.
Yeah.
He's got no idea.
Part of it isn't his problem, because we've had a national increase because of immigration. So when I ran rough sleeping 20 years ago for Manchester Council, there was basically no ethnic minorities sleeping on the streets. They were all white, working class, mentally ill, drug addicts, white people. Roll on 20 years, there's lots and lots of ethnic minorities sleeping on the streets now, and the vast majority of them are immigrants. For many reasons, mainly because they can't access public funds. Another reason is they come over here fairly asylum, nobody. So there's different reasons why it's increased as well, but I'm having none of it. Which in our society now, we shouldn't allow anyone to sleep on the streets, even if they want to. Because lots of people want to.
You sound very totalitarian.
I think it's because I speak very directly.
No. It's not because of your tone. It's because of what you're saying. I will not have it that these things, but I'm asking the nuances.
Can I ask you a question? So do you think we should allow people to sleep on the streets?
I believe in less government control.
That's not why I asked you.
Yeah, because a lot of them choose it. We live in a welfare nanny state. There's a lot of people that can access funds that actually choose to sleep on the streets. I agree with you in a sense that we shouldn't be... I do think it's a police issue in a sense, because I think the police and the Home Office need to be doing their jobs better. So
of course, that's not why I asked you. So my question was, do you think we should allow people to sleep rough on the streets?
Where else are we going to put them?
Again, you're not answering the question. Do you think we should allow people to... Yes.
Well, yes, I do.
Right.
Because where else are we going to put them? Where else? There's not enough housing. I mean, realistically, these people are not in the system. There's not enough housing. Yeah. There's nowhere for them to go. Yeah. So where are you proposing that we put them then?
Yeah, great question. But even if there's no answer, I've got an answer, but even if there is no answer, my point and the reason why I'm so direct and blunt and come across authoritarian is the fact that I'm not prepared to live in a society where we allow the most vulnerable, the most damaged people to live on the streets because we can't fix their problems. Now, we can fix their problems. We don't need to build houses at this moment in time for that problem. What we do is we say to people, we have outreach workers that go out. I've worked with rough sleepers for 20 years doing this. Nobody wants to live on the streets. Even the people who tell you they want to live on the streets don't want to live on the streets. What they mean when they tell you I want to live on the streets is two things. The first thing is, I don't want to have this conversation. So it shuts you down asking me why I'm here. So it shuts you down saying, this is my lifestyle choice. Ends the conversation. The second thing is, what's on offer to me isn't good enough. It's not what I want. So therefore, I'd rather live on the streets. That's an indictment of our homeless services, that they're so bad, people would rather sleep on the streets than access the accommodation or the services that are available. I was going to change all of that. I was going to have a policy that would allow no one to sleep on the streets. We would set up hostels in warehouses that we would take people to, that people could attend every night, guaranteed a bed. We would have drug workers in there, mental health workers in there, working with them. Once you've got someone off the streets for 1 or 2 nights in the bed having a decent sleep, they then, most of them naturally will start reducing how much alcohol and drugs they're taking. They take alcohol and drugs because they're dying on the streets. Why wouldn't you take alcohol and drugs? You get them a bed, you get them a decent night's sleep, they're in a better position to be worked with and to get the life they want, and then we could move them on from these hostels. I would have outreach workers going out, building up relationships with these individuals, because you can't just ask somebody once, do you want help and support? No. Okay, walk away. That's what we do now. When my charity ran a homeless project, we'd sit down with them for hours, chat to them over weeks and months, and every single one of them eventually would say, yeah, I could do with help.
That's great, and I that is actually great. I'm not being...
No.
That is actually great, because I've walked around Manchester and I've seen all the empty warehouses, especially by Piccadilly Station. There's loads of empty warehouses, listed buildings that could be used. So I see that. But you mentioned before about sort of stopping the police from assisting with mental health cases and all the rest of it. So when the mental health patients are violent, which they are, who's going to be looking after that? Because there's no staff. You've already had the staff at A&E at Manchester Royal walkout. The NHS itself is understaffed, especially in Manchester, because they split away, didn't they? So who these? Because a lot of them, when they're coming off drink and drugs, they will often end up in crisis. Who's going to do this?
No. Presumably, the police step involved once a crime has been committed.
No, they don't. The police are
That's
often
what
there.
they should do. That's what they should do. Well, yeah, but I'm answering your question, Garcia.
But my question's for Nick. But go on.
I understand that.
Go on. No, I'm listening.
I thought we were having a conversation.
Go on.
I would assume that if the somebody turns violent, that's a crime.
No.
So the police would step in.
That's not the way services work.
I'm not... If we're having a conversation about changing the services, then it's a valid point.
Yeah, I know, but where I'm leading to is that you'd have to change the way that the NHS is run. You'd have to change the way that those services are accessed, because even outreach...
Police step and get involved if a crime's been committed. GBH is a crime.
Yes, but quite often in healthcare, especially in mental health, it's not treated as such, because it's treated as though they've got a mental health issue. Therefore, they're not culpable. They're not compos mentis, so they can't commit a crime. Yeah, I know, but it's quite often, even if you report it to the police, they will tell you that there's nothing that they can do about it. Alright? That's not anecdotal, that's the actual... There's loads of policies around this, okay? So I'm just asking generally, because you'd have to... in order to get... I mean, I'd vote for you, based on some of the things that you said, because at least you've got a plan, where I've seen Andy Burnham's read his, and he doesn't actually have one, but he was voted in. I guess because there's a lot of things that you'd have to change, and with the councils, because the councils are bankrupt. A lot of these councils haven't got any money, but I keep seeing a lot of roadworks and such happening in Manchester. How are they funding this?
Different pots of money. So the councils are bankrupt because they cannot manage their budgets. The mayor has very little influence over the NHS, so my plans don't involve the NHS, because I'd be setting my plans up to fail if it relied on the NHS. So the mayor has budgets to tackle rough sleeping. Like I said, Andy Burnham spent over £500 million. He spent it all incorrectly. He gave the money to the people who are already running the rough sleeping crisis in Greater Manchester, who couldn't fix it. He just gave them more money. They still can't fix it. So it's a different approach. So the hostels, so you're right about the hostels, because we would need private security there, and we would need at some level some policing of that. Otherwise they become dens of iniquity, and the people on the streets don't want to go there because they're going to be robbed, beat up, mugged. All that would be addressed, because again, I've got 20 years experience in this. I know what the pitfalls are. I know why people don't take support. I know what can be done. I know there's services that we're already funding that don't work. The funding to those services would be cut and cancelled. The services in the NHS that are not working properly, we'll be trying to get some of that to work with us, but it wouldn't rely on that, because the NHS is going to collapse if it doesn't change. There's lots of things we can do, but my experience tells me we can end rough sleeping.
Just to follow on from conversations we've had previously, that obviously Garcia wasn't there for, we've had several conversations about the councils. You used to work in council, you've worked heavily with them, you've given advice, obviously you've been training police officers and all that, and the one consists, every time anybody mentions the council, whether it's the debates, whether it's the CCC, whatever it is the councils are incompetent. They're useless. First of all, how bad is it? And second of all, what do we do to fix it?
And thirdly, who's that they? Who's the they? Because they always say that. They. Who's the they? Because
as in what?
The council.
That's what we mean.
Yeah.
The council.
So
that's the they.
Yeah, no, but who's actually the they?
It's the
give us the names.
It's the institutions. It's the institutions. The systems are corrupt. Not corrupt as in they're making money, but corrupt and they don't work. They're incompetent. The system rewards people to do as little as possible and not rock the boat. And it's not just councils, it's all publicly funded services, the NHS, national government, the police services, that all at some level, they all suffer from the same thing. So how do we fix the councils? You can't fix them. They're a political institution. What we need to do is give them less and less money and less responsibility. There's many things that the councils do that they shouldn't be doing. They don't pay attention to their core role anymore. Councils were set up 100 years ago, or the equivalent to them hundreds of years ago, to deal with sanitation and rubbish collection. That's what they were set up to do.
They were boroughs. We
look at them now, they do everything for everybody. Councils need to say, we're not doing, or be told.
Well, I would argue they don't do anything for anybody in St Helens.
Exactly. So look at our streets and our cities and our towns. Do you think councils are doing a really good job with sanitation and street cleaning?
So are you joking? Everywhere's flooded around here.
Exactly. So they don't do their core duties. What they want to do is the pink and fluffy stuff, because certain residents like that, and that's how they get voted back in. That's how the councillors and the politicians get voted back in.
Do you know, like, listen to this for a story. St St is a dying town. Literally today, we were driving through town and I said, oh, Darwin's, the music shop's closed down. And Garcia was like, oh my God, that's been open for years and years and years. The one next door's closed. The rendezvous that's opposite. All of these places have closed down. And you walk round St Helens town centre, where all the shops are, on a lunchtime on a Saturday, and it's like a ghost town. We went out, I went on a Friday night, it was like 10 p.m, down one of the main bar streets. There was like 3 people out on the street when it used to be busy
heaving.
and packed.
It used to be absolutely heaving. But now people would rather go to Warrington or Wigan.
But here's the thing, right? The council, it's like they're actively trying to do things to kill this town. They've taken away the multi-storey car park. They've closed all the parking down. There is nowhere, and I'm not exaggerating, nowhere to park in St Helens Town Centre because they demolished all the parking. People have kicked off about it, people have complained, and the one high street there was parking, or make a park by the side of the road, they put barriers up so you can't park there. So what planet are you people living on? And the other one is Primark. Now, St Helens is a working class town. Primark is a great idea for St Helens, but do you know why there's no Primark in St Helens? Because Marks and Spencer's said to the council, if you put a Primark in St Helens Town Centre, we'll leave. And council went, oh, can't lose M&S. Who's shopping at M&S in St Helens? Nobody, right? So instead of doing what's best for the people, they were so scared about, oh, can't lose M&S, that that's the reason there's no Primark in St Helens.
So sorry Nick, there are they've just announced a £133 million regeneration project. Okay, the council's broke. They've not addressed the 20 million that disappeared into oblivion last year. Marie Rimmer's a joke. They keep voting in Labour because we live in the north. They're going to always vote in Labour, regardless of what Labour are doing. And I was talking about this today, actually. I was talking about this, the independent gentleman. His name's James Tasker, and he should have won. He was the only one that was running on local issues. And I think it's a similar situation in sort of your case when I'm looking at it like that. Is that you're talking, you obviously are passionate about Manchester. You obviously know the area. You obviously want to see your city centre. Because we live in a small town, you live in a city. You obviously want to see the city centre be better. I remember when I was 18, double that now, and going into Manchester, it was amazing. There was loads of people everywhere, big diverse place. You could go around, and even though there was rough sleepers in Piccadilly Gardens, because Piccadilly Gardens has always had rough sleepers, it was never that bad. Now Piccadilly Garden, I don't like walking through there, even though I know that they've regenerated it and tried to make it hip. But at night
Piccadilly Gardens.
Piccadilly Gardens, that's what it feels like.
And even outside the town hall in St. Peter's Square, tents upon tents upon tents.
And the library. So I have a thing for libraries.
No.
The buildings, the books, the whole shebang, okay, because it's where we store our history. Anyway, outside, I won't just travel into Manchester to go to the library anymore, because it smells like weed, there's people spitting on the floor,
it's awful,
and there's people sleeping outside, and it's kind of gross. Freaks me out, so I won't go on my own anymore, because it's also me, a woman, traveling into the city on my own.
Do you know what it reminds me of?
LA.
Big city US.
I thought you were going to say LA or LA.
Well, no, it's not just LA.
Yeah,
LA, it's across the board. It has like Baltimore, all these different cities in the US. Now, I would argue that Manchester is a hell of a lot safer. We're not at that point yet.
But we're getting there.
But the reason for that is because we don't have terrible. It's not fantastic. We don't have the same issues with our mental health service in this country that America does. Like you can have a conversation with a homeless person on the street in this country. You can't do that in America because they're all nut jobs. So I still to this day don't feel unsafe walking through places like St. Peter's Square and places like that. Side streets on my own, midnight might be a different story, but I do feel still a lot safer than walking. I felt unsafe walking through downtown Baltimore at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a busy day.
Yeah.
To be fair, I felt unsafe
people
just being in America because you don't know if people have guns or not. But I've got that feeling. I don't know how to explain it. I'm very security conscious, but I'm also not in a way because I don't think that people are out to harm me. Do you know what I mean? But when I go into the city centre, it's a different. I don't feel it in Liverpool like I do in Manchester. That's what I mean. At Liverpool, I can walk around the streets at night and I don't feel that level of fear. I don't think anyone's going to attack me or come out and ask me for money or anything like that. It's not the same in Manchester.
Manchester, I think, suffers from being a good location. It doesn't matter where in the country you want to get to. It's about 4 hours. The absolute most. Edinburgh, 4 hours. London, 4 hours.
London's
Cardiff,
1 hour. 1 hour and 42.
Yeah, talking about driving.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's very well centred and it's got a much bigger reputation than Liverpool has. So when you're getting mass immigration, all that kind of thing, a lot of people hear the word Manchester as it's not London, it's the next place, and are therefore moving there as a result of that.
But I also think it has to do. Sorry, Nick. I also think it has to do with the communities in Manchester. Manchester's more diverse than Liverpool, but not in the sense that Manchester has specific areas for specific people. Liverpool doesn't. Everybody lives amongst each other. It's not like there isn't an Oldham in Liverpool.
I don't know.
No, there isn't. No. There isn't a Bradford in Liverpool.
I mean, are we talking... Right, okay, hang on.
Oh, no, because that sounds super Islamophobic. It's not supposed to.
We all know how you feel about Muslims. It's fine.
Oh, my God. It's not all the Muslims.
I think you're conflating two things here. Oldham and Bradford are not in Manchester. They're in Greater Manchester. So when you're comparing apples to oranges. If you're talking about Liverpool, what you should be doing is talking about Merseyside. If you're talking about Oldham and Bradford in Greater Manchester, then you should be saying there's no place like... I think there might be a few.
Our country is getting more and more dangerous.
Yes.
The towns, the villages, the cities are all getting more dangerous. So Manchester city centre has never really been a safe place compared to a nice little sleepy village somewhere. The bigger the place is, the more money is attracted to it, the more crime you're going to get. But the policies we've enacted in our country over my lifetime has made the situation worse. You talked about mental health and America. The reason why a place like San Francisco was so bad with mental health is because they basically legalised drug taking. So you can pull down your pants in San Francisco and inject heroin into your leg in front of a police officer, and the police officer can't do anything about it. We've started doing that in this country. You can walk past a police officer now smoking cannabis. He won't even speak to you because that drug now is basically legal in this country. I'm not saying it does the same damage as heroin. I'm just saying we're on this slippery path where our policies and making our country, our cities, our lives more dangerous. And
I think it doesn't help as well in that California was the only state that did it. I think if the entire US had, now I'm not above legalising all drugs obviously, but I think if the entire US had legalised all drugs, we wouldn't be seeing such a big problem in California. What California did is basically put out calling cards to everyone else in the United States saying, if you want to take drugs legally, come to us.
And it's got nice weather.
Yeah, and I was going to say the temperature helps. England is cold. So for me, when I see, like, I feel for homeless people in the UK. There's two ways I look at it, because we do live in a nanny state. Okay?
And this, sorry to interrupt.
No,
it breeds the mindset.
Yeah.
It breeds the mindset.
But we do live in a nanny state. We live in a situation where, and I guess this is what you were talking about before, because we've touched on this in our immigration episode, where I was talking about people coming over on a student visa, bringing their wife, bringing their kids, and because they got kids, and those kids are likely to be, you know what, it seems like I'm talking about a specific group of people, but I am talking about Manchester, Greater Manchester, so I am talking about a specific group of people, and I'm not apologising. When, you know, they bring their entire family, those kids are likely to have some sort of disability. Under the law, you have to house children, okay? The Children Act says that. So that's then how it happens. That's not to say that that's the only reason and stuff like that. That's not to say that, but the waves and waves of immigration that we've had to these cities, people are unable to cope. We're not getting it in the same way because we live in a small town, but we are.
But we see it in Manchester.
But I've also seen the way that they're advertising the town that we live in to sort of see as some sort of young professional in between, because we are in a good location. Because we can get, it's half an hour from Manchester, or half an hour from Wigan, half an hour from Liverpool. Do you get what I'm trying to say there? So they're building all these houses, no doctors, no schools, no anything like that. And when housing does come up, instead of helping the people that are already here, but not just already here, we shouldn't have veterans on the street. We have elderly people on the street. We should not have elderly people on the street. We're still in the generation, because don't forget the NHS is only, 17. We're still in the generation where those people would have just been those first and second wave that grew up with the NHS. We should be doing better. We should be doing better for the people that are paying into the system.
So we need to close the borders.
And even if they're not paying into the system, we need to stop giving them money and deport them. Because we do that anyway. We do it anyway. So why don't we do it to that specific group? It doesn't feel like we do it for that specific group.
And if you come into this country as a student, you don't get to bring your mother with you.
Why do you need your mom?
I think it's common sense, surely.
Why do you need your wife? How is 20 hours a week, which is all you're allowed to work legally, going to support you? I mean, when I was a student, I had to work full-time hours, as well as be a full-time student, because how else would I pay my bills? They're restricted under law. So what are they doing? And benefits. Oh my God, people always talk about benefits and sort of how they do benefits. They get it through the disabled child. That's how
they get it through many ways. The question you need to ask yourselves is, why do we have a mass migration problem?
Tony Blair.
Labour.
Followed by the Tories.
Yeah.
Followed by Labour.
It started. It's
followed by ideology.
No, basically it started from Windrush. It's the same problem. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So the reason why we have a mass migration problem is because the people who benefit, the businesses and the people who own those businesses who benefit from cheap labour, constantly lobby government, constantly sponsor politicians and their campaigns, and convince them that this is the only way we're going to grow the economy, is mass migration. And the more mass migration we get, you can lower wages. And the reason why we can lower wages is because the state then tops up everyone's wages with benefits to make it a living wage. The whole problem is about our low skill migrant labour problem. That's what the problem is. So if we address that and we stop listening to all the businesses who want to pay people £8, £9 an hour, and we had a similar problem in 13th, 14th century when we had the Black Death. The Black Death wiped out millions of people across Europe. Some of the estimates are like 3/4 of the population.
Yeah.
It's huge. And what happened was the poor working class people who survived had a better way of negotiating their pay on farms and things like that, because I got 9 farms who want me because everyone else is dead. I want more money, and I'm going to go on the farms where it's easier to work. So what we paid the poor people to work in our country started raising. They got better conditions, and that's because once you reduce the supply of labour, businesses, people who employ people, will pay more to get that labour. And because there's never been a shortage of cheap labour in our country since the end of the Second World War, that's why we've become a low wage society, and it's damaging everybody.
And if you look at the standard of living in this country compared to countries like the US, I mean that's more of a consumer society anyway. They look at how much we're getting paid, and they're like, "What?
Yeah,
what's going on?"
I agree.
All Western countries, a lot of non-Western countries, their standard of living in terms of how expensive things are compared to how much they're getting paid. The UK, there's nothing.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying about low skilled labour. I don't agree. I can see what you were talking about, like where it started with the Windrush situation, but the situation was a completely different situation then. Now, what we saw since, for me, in my lifetime, in 2016. I'm not sure what happened in 2016.
Syrian refugee crisis.
Yes, thank you. Since 2016, the waves of immigration that we've had has destroyed this country in greater steps. Like, they say Alzheimer's is a shell.
Agree, yeah.
So prior to that, we had immigration issues, sure. But after 2016, it started falling off a cliff. And that's where I think that we dropped the ball. I think that the worst thing the Conservatives ever did was sort of start to increase minimum wage instead of looking at how spending was happening. How
increasing minimum wage never helps.
Minimum wage was a direct result of mass immigration. It was the only way they could make employers pay more for their staff. If we lived in a true market economy without mass migration, there's no need for a minimum wage. Because you'd be competing for those workers and you'd be paying more. But because we quashed that, the government quashed it with mass immigration, they then thought we need to increase the wages, otherwise we're topping it up with benefits all the time.
And which is so funny. Minimum wages restrict people, and it leads to more people being unemployed.
Which is so funny though, because if you Thatcher and laissez-faire politics, how did we get from that to whatever the Conservative Party is now? So under them, they've made bad decision after bad decision that's landed us here. But them and their ivory towers are not dealing with the on the ground situation. We mentioned this during our I keep referencing this immigration episode. Feel free to go and check it out. Our immigration episode when we were talking about one of the hotels in a couple of the hotels that during the pandemic they had put undocumented migrants into it. Okay, they then became essentially small ghettos in these areas where then people of the towns, the places that live there, were afraid to go there. And I think it's this situation. We haven't learned anything from. I mean, I don't want to say we didn't learn from the Nazis because I feel like that's its own issue. But in terms of grouping people into ghettos, we haven't learned. We should have. I've said this before. We should have taken the Norway way. We should have done it the Norway way. No, the Norway way. You know.
Yeah, I need to explain what that is.
Oh, they take a family. And they just move that family. So if you speak a certain language, they'll teach you the Norwegian, and then they'll move you into a town where you're the only family from that country there.
Yeah.
So you have no choice but to assimilate.
Yeah.
We should have done it that way, but we didn't.
The problem is there's too much mass immigration to get away with that because there's too many immigrants to only put one in one town, and so it wouldn't have worked in this country because
those days are gone.
Of course, it wouldn't have worked in the same way, but they could have done it. They could have done it differently. Instead, what they did was take these people off these boats, leave them in the. Do you remember that big old boat where everybody got COVID and all the rest of it? And now they've got an asylum boat, a massive boat that's being funded by taxpayers that's only got asylum seekers in. What?
Send them back.
Send them back to their own countries. And this is not. There is a system set up for if you are in danger or anything like that. There's a system set up for it. Use the legal system.
But this is what happens, right? First of all, if you're coming into this country off a boat, by definition, you're not an asylum seeker. If you want to seek asylum, go through the port of entry, do it the legal way.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, what happens is they'll go in, they'll claim asylum, right, through a port of entry or whatever, and then the asylum office or whatever it's called will say, okay, yeah, no problem, we'll deal with your case in 2 years. Off you go. They vanish into the ether and they never come back to the where they're supposed to. They're not held. They're just released until their court date, which they never turn up to because they know they're at illegal.
Then they have to make money, so then they're doing crime, and then they're doing cash in hand under the table. They're not then contributing. So for me, whilst you're waiting for your asylum claim to be done, you should be detained. And I'm not saying that we should be putting people in cages. You know, we're not taking a leaf out of America's book or, you know, what the Nazis did. We're not doing that. I'm saying that there has to be a better way to deal with this. And you have to limit the amount. And I think this is a problem with the UK. We never say no. Why?
An easier way, what we're trying to do now is create fixes for parts of the broken system. System's completely broken. What we have to do is say no more immigration. The borders are closed for something like a decade. We pull out of the treaties such as the Refugee Treaty and
ECHL.
So I wouldn't accept any refugees or asylum seekers. We just say those days are gone. We accept none. If your country's at war and you're fleeing to the country next door, as a rich Western country, I think we should send some money to support the country you've moved to. The stats I've seen is it costs 1%. So if you take an asylum seeker into this country, you can fund at least 100 asylum seekers to live in their neighbouring country. So it's cost effective to keep them in the countries next to their country. It's easier for them to go back to their own homes. We pull out of all those international treaties and we say no more. And we set up basically Fortress UK. And
I agree. Protectionism.
After 10 years, we might say, do you know what? We need a couple of world-class scientists. Yeah, 8 of you can come in. I'm not. So at the moment in time, I'm talking about saying no to every migrant, regardless of their skills. And the way I would explain that is, people say, yeah, that's great, but we want the clever ones. No, we don't. We keep stealing the best of people from poor countries. And we wonder why those countries can never develop and never get better and are still shitholes. It's because the West has a new version of slavery, and we go round the world and we steal their medical staff and we steal their scientists. We bring them all to the West and we wonder why we're sending money to those countries to keep them afloat. It's because we keep stealing the best people.
Yeah, but that's okay. I don't agree with what you just said about shithole countries. I don't think any country is a shithole.
Oh, I've been to many of them.
I've also travelled, but I don't think any of them are. But I do agree with what you just said about protectionism, and I also agree about the brain drain. What we are doing is stealing from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
We are having a brain drain. So we're stealing from other places to replace ours. Instead of just focusing on the fact of you are right, the symptoms. We're trying to fix the system. We're dealing with the symptoms when we could have. Prevention is better than cure, and we need to. So I guess. Are you saying then that we should dismantle the system? Because you just said for the BLM thing at the beginning, then they said dismantling the nuclear family.
Can I just make a quick interjection?
Yep. No.
There is no mass brain drain in what we think that there is. Well, let me explain what I mean by that. 500,000 people every year leave. 1.5 million come in. It's about 1 million net every year, right? Out of those 500,000 people that leave, the vast majority of them have only come here on 2-year visas, etc., etc. Native-born British people are only losing 80,000 a year. So that is not to the same level. I mean, a lot of them are leaving for better opportunities. So first of all, in order to keep them, obviously, we need to increase our opportunities. But second of all, I don't think that we're losing as many people in terms of the brain drain than what a lot of people think we are.
No, but 80,000 people is still a lot of people.
Oh,
and those 80,000 people will be
doctors, lawyers, and nurses.
Will be some of the most productive and well-off people in our society.
Yeah.
80,000 a year over a decade adds up. Yeah. So we're not losing the 80,000 of the British people who are a tax drain, who do nothing, who are criminal. We're losing the best of the best. So it's a small drain compared to what's coming in, but it's still a brain drain.
But then also because of what's coming in is more low-skilled workers, it's not making up for it.
Yeah.
It's not making up for it at all. So I know loads of nurses I'm a nurse. I know loads of nurses that have pissed off to Australia, New Zealand, all of those things, because they'll get double the pay, a better life, better weather. There's nothing we can do about it, and their skills will be useful and they'll be respected. Here, there's people. The NHS is crumbling. The staff are off with stress. Nobody can cope with what the hell is happening in this country, and instead of addressing it, they just keep ignoring it. I mean, aren't we in a 6-month chat? Isn't Keir having a 6-month chat with the public to try and figure out what he's going to do? A little coffee and croissant to discuss what we're going to do next, even though he made all these promises and all the rest of it. This is what happens in this country, the same thing that happens in America. So what you just my final point on this is only based on what you just said. I agree with what you were saying about people going to their nearest country. The issue I have with that is we're an island. We're an island. We're an island. We're an island. There is no war happening in Ireland, which is obviously we're made up of 3 countries and territory. There's no war happening in Ireland. They're our nearest country. Yeah. So unless they're fleeing to us, no one else should be fleeing to us.
France.
Exactly.
Or France.
France.
There's no war in France either.
No, so they shouldn't be fleeing to us, and I think this is the issue that I have. So when we as a country are paying France to keep them out, they're doing nothing.
Yeah.
We need to go into a protectionist mode. I agree, and I think part of that, though, what you were saying about having locking people off, people didn't even want to pick strawberries here. We need to stop our the sheer amount of imports that this country, we don't produce anything anymore. We produce nothing. So even if we did go into a protectionist mode, we've already fucked over everybody that could help us. The fisheries,
especially with the farmers.
Yeah, don't. Are you trying to rile me? Because I'm riled.
Lots of our problems.
Fucked over the farmers, the fisheries, everything that could sustain. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Go on.
Well, we won't be able to fix the farmers in this episode. That's a whole thing altogether.
Yeah.
But we're talking about mass migration and cheap labour. Have you ever heard of strawberry picking machines?
Yeah, they have. I watch a load of videos.
Exactly. They
have them in China.
Lots of the skills that we use low-skilled migrant labour to do, we have technology to do those jobs. And so those jobs will still be done. And so every 100 people we employ to pick strawberries, those jobs will disappear, and we would create 1 or 2 high-skilled jobs to build the machines, run machines, and do that, who then could be 2 British people. So we could get rid of the low-skilled jobs and move towards a more productive work environment and still keep 1 or 2 of those jobs. Everybody benefits from that. The people who build the machines, maintain the machines. A lot of the solutions are out there. What we're lacking, which is going to come in the next decade, but what we're lacking are politicians with a backbone who will do the best things for the country and not the best things for them and their career. That's the big problem we've got. Career politicians.
Yeah.
I've met many. I've met prime ministers all the way down to councillors. I've worked with lots of them. And every single one of them, their priority is being elected again at the next election.
I've made this point.
Which prime ministers have you met?
Personally, I've interviewed David Cameron live on Capital Radio. I've met... Who else have I met in the flesh? I've spoken to and met the Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg. I worked for... Well, I say work for... I did some work with Gordon Brown's policy unit. I did some work with Boris Johnson's policy unit, even though I didn't meet the two prime ministers. Who other senior people have I met?
Who's your
And
favourite?
you get the same vibes from all of them, regardless of which party they're standing for.
Oh yeah. Who do I like the most? None of them. They never cross my mind.
Fair enough.
I'm not here to like politicians.
I am also of the. I've made this point when we were talking about our Keir Starmer video. Go back and watch that.
That's one of the things I wanted to speak to Nick about.
I absolutely agree that we need to get rid of career politicians.
Do you think
100%.
it should be a system like they have in America, where it's 2 terms max? Donald Trump wants to bring in 2 terms max for all members of Congress.
I agree, and I think we should get rid of the House of Lords as well. But I think we should replace it because we need checks and balances.
I don't think we should be getting rid of the House of Lords. So that's a debate we can have another time.
So, do we have term limits on MPs? I'm interested in that. I'd have to do a lot of research looking at it, but it straight away I can see that being a plus because it stops the career politicians. I like that. House of Lords needs reforming. I wouldn't scrap the House of Lords because the people who want to scrap the House of Lords, I understand their reasoning, but what it'll be replaced with is an elected chamber. And the people who want to scrap the House of Lords have no confidence in the elected chamber, which is House of Commons. So we're scrapping something that isn't working well and we're going to replace it with something we know doesn't work. That makes no sense. So I'd like to see the House of...
After having a conversation with Claire Fox, she said the amount of shit that gets passed through the elected chamber, House of Commons, and goes straight into the House of Lords. So they have to knock back stuff how this policy works is ridiculous.
House of Commons needs heavily reducing. We don't need 1,200 Lords now in there. Seats.
House of Lords.
Yeah, it only seats 300-400 or something. But if maybe not, but there's more Lords that can actually fit in the chamber by many.
I agree. I think we should get rid of peerages, like lifelong.
Lifelong peerages should go.
Yeah,
hereditary peerages.
All the
you don't think they should go? Peerages.
Church ones should go. The life peerages should go.
Hereditary ones should go.
Hereditary ones should go. I would like to see a chamber that's not elected, but people are chosen for the skills they have. And being a successful politician isn't one of the skills you should be elected. I would like to see a working group of Lords that includes people like Dyson, Alan Sugar, and other people I've not heard of, because even if I don't agree with them politically, they've got something to say on business that I don't know about.
I want the leaders of industry to be there. That's what I agree. Aggressively agree with you.
People who are amazing, people who may have spent years running different NHS trusts. I'd like one, not all of them, but 1 or 2 of them in there because they understand NHS.
Yeah.
And I would like, and should they be termed or not? I'm not sure, but we need to redesign the House of Lords, but I don't want it to be an elected chamber.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's one of the main problems. People like Keir Starmer, doesn't have a bloody. He's a lawyer, doesn't have a clue about business. Coming in and making decisions about obviously the farming, which I don't want to.
I'd also like to see Lords' attendance and the amount they contribute to debates annually reported. Because you're in the House of Lords, you've been twice in the year, you're gone, mate. Or you turn up every day, fine, you get your £400 a day, fine. But you sit on no committees, you've never asked a question, you don't contribute to... You're here for the £400 a day, you're gone. I would like to see rules like that applied to the House of Lords.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the riots following the Southport stabbings.
Yep.
I saw a couple of your YouTube videos following that. You were quite vocal on it.
Yeah.
We did, I don't know if you watched it, probably not.
No.
We did a couple of episodes. Keir Starmer had other forms of totalitarianism. Yeah. Go check it out. Did you think it was building? What are in terms of the riots? What are your predictions for the future? Basically.
It'd been building for decades. What was surprising was it didn't happen after the 22 people on my street in the city centre got blew up 7 years ago. We all got together and sang "Don't Look Back in Anger." Roll on 7 years, people have changed. People are sick of radical Islam. People are sick of having armed police walk around their streets and in Christmas markets. People are sick of it. People are also sick of the moderate Muslims not standing up and having the balls to tackle their own community. There's a backlash coming, and I don't want this backlash to happen, but moderate Muslims need to do a lot more. Otherwise, this is going to be extremely damaging to the Muslim community. Southport stabbings. None of it surprised me, but some people on the demonstrations fell into the trap of causing violence, and that was all the government needed to come down hard to dismiss the concerns of everybody who was there, because most people were there because of dead 3 girls who'd been stabbed by what we thought at the time was an Islamist. And even at a time where there was no evidence it was an Islamist, it looked like an Islamist attack. And humans are very good at seeing patterns. Doesn't mean they're always right, but we see patterns. And to us, that smell of an Islamist attack turns out it's true. But a couple of the idiots who caused violence and attacked the police, who may have been provoked in some incidents to attack the police. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but they let themselves down and they let the country down, because that was all that was needed for government to come down hard. The government now's come down hard and everyone's afraid. If 3 girls get stabbed tomorrow, I don't think you may not see people on the streets, because people are afraid. They've seen the prison sentences and they've gone, who wants to go to jail for 3 years? I don't.
See, I do believe that we should be overthrowing the government, but I know that's an unpopular opinion. It's fine.
How should we get there?
Sorry?
How should we get there? With guns and
No.
machetes?
So my issue, I really do have issue. Like I told you this. I don't go to the traffic centre anymore, because the last time I was there, I got stopped by a police officer with a gun. All he was doing was asking me something ridiculous, benign. Can't even remember what the question was. But I've never felt so scared. I felt more scared in that interaction than I did walking through anywhere in America. I was a bit like...
Very something benign is something like, where's the name?
Yeah, it was something ridiculous. Nothing to do with me, nothing to do with anything. But he was walking around with this...
Yeah.
I was like...
Machine gun.
But it's a shopping centre. We were just shopping, so it scared the crap out of me. And
for anybody that's watching from America, where this is perfectly normal,
it's not normal
in the
for
UK.
us.
The police do not carry firearms in the UK.
They carry a truncheon, and pepper spray. But I worry that, unlike America, where they have the means to overthrow the government should they become totalitarian, we don't have that. And we're a small island, and we're divided as it is. I mean, I know whose side you'll all be on in the race war, but we're divided as it is. I fear that we're going down a dark path that we've already started going down since 2016, and I'm afraid to see where it's going to go, because I feel like crime in this country has exploded. The stabbings, the gun crime, which we didn't really have before, gun crime we have now. And
Keir Starmer demonising the people that are getting upset about that. That's the big issue, and that's just riles people up even more.
The
cherry?
Yeah, whatever.
That's what's gonna
the spark. That's the one. That's what's gonna make it go boom. And I fear that the next terrorist incident, because there will be, it's not going to be like the man with the narwhal thing. It's not. That was terrible, but it was also hilarious because he stabbed them with a freaking. That's not going to be like that. This thing in Southport with these 3 young girls, that exploded, but only it. People think it was bad. That was nothing. My parents were telling me about some riots in the 80s or something. Yeah. And since I've been in the north, they were telling me about Toxic. And Moss Side riots and all of those things, and how they quickly spread. I remember in 2011 when those riots quickly spread.
Riots always spread because people, especially now with social media, people hear about it and people jump on the bandwagon.
And people destroy, and we have no money to fix. So I'm afraid that we're going to break down our own society. Do you see what? Do you see what I mean? Yeah. We're breaking down our own society, and then we're looking for someone to come in, swoop in, and fix it. But they're not going to fix it because the people that are doing that is the government.
Can I give you some hope?
I'm a very pessimistic person.
I'm a very optimistic person, even though the state of our country at the moment is terrible. I'm a very optimistic person. Our systems work. Individual organisations may be failing, but England's 100 years old, 1,000 years old. Our systems are hundreds of years old. We've been in bad times before. We've been, you look at the Spanish Armada, where the world power, the Spanish, attempted 3 times to invade us, and we managed to survive. Napoleon conquered Europe. He had boats waiting, so he was only waiting for 6 hours of good weather to invade England, and we survived. Nazi Germany, we survived. I'm old enough to remember the 1970s, which is worse than this Labour government. In the 1970s, we couldn't even bury dead bodies. We had mountains of rubbish on every street corner because no one picked up the rubbish. My house was full of candles. Every day we were getting power cuts. We didn't have enough electricity in the country. Our country was failing. We were called the sick man of Europe. That's why we joined the EU in 1974, because we wanted someone to save us. That's how bad our country was. We've been in worse times than this before, and we always come through successful. Now, we're on a decline at the moment, and I wanted Labour to win the last election. Not because I'm a socialist, not because I thought they'd do anything good. I knew they'd be worse than the Tories. The last 14 years of Tories has been the worst government in my lifetime. But I wanted Labour to win because I knew they'd be even worse, and they would destroy the country even quicker. We need to hit rock bottom, and we're getting close to it now. Only when we hit rock bottom will the country change, will people have had enough. It's happening now, but a little bit more, and then people will vote differently. This government will not last 5 years. This government, I think, might last 2 years. I think I keep saying Starmer will be out by Christmas. It might be next year now. Starmer won't last, and then his government will fall after that. Because it just can't go on. Because you're right, everyone is angry, everyone's upset, our standard of living's declining. All it's going to take is a couple of things they can't control, such as a big bomb somewhere. Such as, well, let's be honest, when Trump takes over the world next year, we don't know how that's going to impact everything. Net zero lunacy is happening. It's only going to take power cuts.
Yeah.
And then we know it's down to net zero. That's going to change everything. Another war somewhere that interferes with food production in another country, because we only make 33% of our food in this country. Something's going. The Israel war might expand.
I think it will, actually.
We might get dragged into that.
We already did.
But we might actually get dragged into something. Yeah. So we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm 100% sure that the way things are going at the moment with the people I'm listening to, Reform UK is doing really well. I'm not saying Reform UK is the answer. I'm just saying, but they're saying some of the right things. Other parties will start changing. The Tories might go back to being a Tory party. Labour might stop being so mental, just like the Democrats in America may change now that they've been heavily defeated.
I don't think that's going to happen in either of those cases, with Labour or the Democrats. They're completely incapable of looking at it.
It happened in the 70s. Labour were mental in the 70s. And then we had several Labour leaders when there was opposition who had the biggest civil wars in their party you've ever seen. And those parties began to change. So we don't know what can happen. But I know the sunny uphills are on the way. I just think we've got to suffer another couple of more years till everyone realises all this crap, LGBT crap, racial crap, the net zero crap, mass immigration crap, none of this is working, and we'll find our common sense again and things will start getting better.
I think that things in this country will get better when we regain our sense of community. I think that Britain and the Western world in general has become far too individualistic. In order for society to work, we must all agree to the social contract. We must all agree to the same social contract.
And do you know who damaged that?
Mass immigration.
Feminism. Feminism started it. Feminism started destroying the family unit. started destroying the way we raised our children, started breaking down social norms, and roll on. This is where we are today.
I feel like
Garcia, you said in our last podcast episode about social media that back in the day people would use the phrase "it takes a village to raise a kid."
I agree.
It used to.
That's what I'm talking about, community. And
I disagree with that proverb that it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes parents and family to raise a child. It takes a village to socialise a child.
Yeah, but when I talk about a village, I do include I include your extended family. I don't include just the nuclear family. So in your home, yes, you have to, and also you have to take interest in your children, be interested in them. But also in terms of the community, the wider community, you can only correct certain things, but when your kids go out, they represent you.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Part of that is when you're doing. I'm saying this in my community when I was growing up. When before I'd even get home, I'd have gotten in trouble along the way if I had done something for the simple fact that it wasn't an I'm overstepping or anything like that. It was a no, I'm correcting a child. And I think that there's differences here, and that we've lost it. We've lost our sense of self. I don't think Britain knows what it is anymore. I think that Britain has lost its way,
sense of identity.
Yeah, and I think this is what's going to be our general downfall. I'm all for individual thought, but I'm for collective action.
We jump in there. So have we lost our way as a country? Yes, we have. And I've been thinking about something the last couple of weeks. I started thinking about London, but you can extend it to mean the whole country. The UK is basically become an economic zone. We're not a country anymore now.
What zone?
An economic zone. That's all we are. We're a place.
That's all the government
sees us as.
Yeah.
And that's what the
Line
world
go
sees.
up equals good.
Yeah.
When it comes to like GDP.
Yeah. But that's all mass migration, immigrants think we are. An economic zone. It's all this island is all about making money and those graphs. We're not a nation anymore now. There's nothing that holds us together. There's nothing that we celebrate together. We're just a money making area. And then talking about the family. Do you know why humans live so long? Because most mammals, once your reproduction cycle's ended, you die. Why do humans live so long into their 80s, 90s?
Technology?
Well, it's helped because of technology, but even before that, we lived a long time.
We're social creatures.
Yeah, we're social creatures, but why do we live so long where there's no reproduction value anymore? It's because grandparents are instrumental in raising their grandchildren. It goes back to what you were saying
about a village. Yeah,
parents, they are vital to raise their children, but parents have to go out to work, have to go out and hunt, have to go, gathering food, clean. They've got other duties as well as raising their children. Grandparents live so long because they're essential to help raise their grandchildren and ensure that the parents are doing a good job. Plus, grandparents have a lot of knowledge collected over many decades. They're there to educate their grandchildren as well. But what do we do post-Second World War? We started rejecting grandparents. We stick them in homes now. We passed a bill the other day where we can start killing them in NHS hospitals in a couple of years' time.
Yeah. But
and
you see, in
BAME,
those BAME communities, black and minority ethnic, those things still happen.
To a lesser extent, because that poison of what we've done in the West is infiltrating those communities. They only, not to the extent we're doing it, but it happens because we become over individualistic.
Yeah.
We say, why is it my responsibility to look after my mum? It's the state's responsibility. And we keep giving the state more and more power over our lives and more responsibility, where the answer is it's your responsibility as an individual.
Government interference.
Yes. Sorry. You should make sure your children brush your teeth, not your school.
Yep.
It's you that should look after your elderly parents, not the state.
Agreed. Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. Do you know what? You can come back.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, on that note, should we?
Yeah, I think we've talked for long enough.
A while.
So we decided along the way here that we were going to ask a final question.
Yep.
We did. So the question that we've gone for is there anything that you're not good at that you wish you were?
Oh, Oh, loads.
Pick one.
I know for a fact that I'm not everything I should be or could be. I know for a fact I should have worked harder at many things, that I could work harder at things now, but I don't, because I still have the same traits we all have. I'm too lazy, I'm too self-centered, I'm easily distracted, I think I'm better than I am. I know I have flaws, but what's one thing that I wish I was better at? I wish I was better at... Oh, it's a good one. And it's something that I thought about when you spoke to me, and you're not the first person to say something like that. I wish I was better at speaking about important things more empathetically, without being pink and fluffy. So I hate it when people are pink and fluffy. So I speak about things matter-of-factly, and sometimes it makes people think I'm authoritarian or that I don't care. But you only have to look at my work history to know I do care.
Yeah.
You know, who else sets up charities with their own redundancy to help kids on the streets? Who else works on the streets with homeless people and spends months talking to them, getting into accommodation and help and support? So I know I do care. I care deeply. But because I know we have a short attention span, I've picked up a style where I want to get straight to the heart of it and make you understand fast. And I know I've not mastered that yet, because I can come across too harsh. But what I'm really trying to do is avoid going, oh, we just need group hugs. And if we can just be more compassionate, if we can just, because I hate that bollocks, because it means nothing. And I want to give answers.
Screw you, the Greens. No, I'm joking. I've suffered enough for that.
I want to get to the truth. I want to get the answers out there. So I wish I was better at managing that.
Awesome.
Well done. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you much.
And to our viewers, we'll see you next time.
Feel free to comment, subscribe, and join in the conversation. And answer the question. Let us know what you do. How can we fix the UK? What systems do we need to change? And if not, are we going to go into full protectionism? Should we?
And find me on YouTube at Nick Buckley MBE.
Thank you.
See you later. Oh, before we finish, is there any books you want to plug?
I've got a new book out a couple of weeks ago called England's My England. The death and resurrection of the greatest country ever to exist. So I explain why we're in this mess, ranging, you know, from historical stuff to communism to feminism to the woke agenda, about a lot of these things are being used by our enemies to attack us. Why wouldn't they? We're doing the same things to other countries, so why aren't they doing it? You know, of course they're doing it to us. About lack of personal responsibility, about how we've over feminized men and they've just turned into inferior versions of women. Nothing wrong in being a woman, but nobody wants an inferior version of anything. Men are to be men, women are to be women. We both have equal responsibility in society, but we have different roles and we're blurring that too much. And then I talk about the last chapter about how the average person, what they can do to start saving this country. And it's about taking personal responsibility. It's about not being afraid, not being a coward, speaking your mind, even if you know other people don't want you to say that. Because you doing that gives other people courage. They then will speak and talk about what they want to talk about. And that grass movement can change a nation. But if you show that you're afraid of Keir Starmer and the government, that then breeds fear in other people that they should be afraid. And next thing you know, we're Soviet Britain, and that's where we're heading at the moment.
Thank you. Well, I'll pick up a copy, and you should too.
Awesome. We'll see you in the next one, guys.